The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over Marcus's backyard. The pool sparkled like a jewel, its clear blue water inviting and serene. It was Marcus's pride, his escape from the world. But today, the peace was shattered. Loud laughter echoed across the yard, laughter that didn't belong to him or his family. Marcus turned, his eyes narrowing as he saw Karen, his neighbor, lounging in his pool like she owned it. She was sipping a drink, her sunglasses perched on her nose, completely at ease. Marcus clenched his fists. This wasn't the first time she'd crossed the line, but it would be the last. Before continuing this amazing story, let us know where are you watching from? Also hit the subscribe button for daily notifications of upcoming stories. Let's begin the story. Marcus was a tall, broad-shouldered man in his early 40s. His dark skin glistened under the sun, and his short, curly hair was always neatly trimmed. He had a calm demeanor, but his sharp eyes revealed a quiet strength. Marcus worked as a construction manager, a job he had built from the ground up. He was proud of his career, and even prouder of his home. The pool was his dream, a symbol of his hard work and success. He spent weekends maintaining it, ensuring the water was crystal clear and the surrounding garden was lush and vibrant. But Karen, she was the exact opposite. Karen was in her late 30s with bleached blonde hair that she always wore in a tight ponytail. Her sharp features and piercing blue eyes gave her a commanding presence. She worked as a real estate agent, often boasting about her high-end clients and luxurious lifestyle. Karen had a reputation in the neighborhood for being rude and entitled. She treated people as if they were beneath her, especially Marcus. She often made snide remarks about his career and lifestyle, masking her racism with fake smiles and backhanded compliments. Marcus had tolerated her for too long. She had a history of making snide comments. "Wow, Marcus, didn't think a guy like you would have a place like this," she had said once, walking past his house when he first moved in. Another time, she had laughed and said, "I bet your house is the nicest one on your old block, huh?" Marcus had brushed it off. He had learned long ago not to waste energy on people like her. But now, she wasn't just making comments. She was invading his space. And today was the last straw. His phone buzzed on the patio table. It was a text from his neighbor, James. "James, bro, I saw Karen in your pool again. She's out of control." Marcus sighed. Apparently, he wasn't the only one fed up with her behavior. A few minutes later, Marcus grabbed his towel and went inside, determined to cool off, both physically and mentally. He wasn't going to let her ruin his day, but as he opened his social media app, his frustration boiled over. Karen had posted a picture of herself in his pool, lounging on that ridiculous pink inflatable. The caption? "Living my best life at number Karen's Oasis." Marcus stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. She was making a joke out of this. She was mocking him. This wasn't just some harmless fun. This was disrespect. He had let it slide too many times. But not anymore. The next morning, Marcus stepped outside with his coffee, hoping for a peaceful start to his day. But as soon as he looked toward his backyard, his stomach tightened. Laughter, music, the sound of people splashing in his pool. He set his mug down with a slow, deliberate movement. Then, clenching his jaw, he walked to the edge of his patio. Karen was back. But this time, she hadn't come alone. There were 3 other people with her, 2 women and a man, all in swimsuits, lounging in the water as if they belonged there. A Bluetooth speaker sat on the pool deck, blasting some pop song. One of the women floated on the pink inflatable, sipping a drink. Marcus took a deep breath, his fingers tightening into fists. Karen. She turned her head lazily, a smirk already forming. "Oh, hey, Marcus. Great weather today, huh?" His blood pressure spiked. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Karen pushed her sunglasses up onto her head. Relax, neighbor. My friends and I just needed to cool off. It's so hot today. Marcus stepped forward. This is my property. Karen rolled her eyes. Oh, come on. It's just a pool. You barely even use it. One of her friends, an equally smug-looking blonde, laughed. Yeah, Marcus. You should be grateful we're making use of it. That word. Grateful. Marcus clenched his jaw. Karen's tone changed slightly, taking on that fake sweetness she always used when she wanted to be extra condescending. Seriously, Marcus, you should be happy to have neighbors who appreciate the beauty of your home. You know, people like you usually don't have places this nice. Marcus exhaled sharply through his nose. He knew exactly what she meant. People like you. She had been throwing little digs like that at him since she moved in. Always subtle, always with that smug little smirk. The man in the pool shook his head, chuckling. Dude, it's just water. Chill out. Marcus's fingers twitched. He was done. No, he said, his voice calm but firm. You need to chill out. As in, get out of my damn pool before I call the cops. Karen scoffed. You wouldn't. Marcus pulled out his phone. Try me. The smirk faded from her lips. For a moment, she just stared at him, as if she couldn't believe he was serious. Then she sighed dramatically. God, you're so uptight. She gestured to her friends, and they all started climbing out of the water. Fine. We were leaving anyway? Marcus watched them gather their things, dripping water all over his pool deck. Karen grabbed her towel, then turned to him with one last sneer. You really should learn to share, Marcus. He didn't respond. He just stood there, arms crossed, waiting for them to leave. As they walked through the gate, Karen pulled out her phone. A second later, Marcus's own phone buzzed with a notification. He looked down. Karen had just posted another picture, this time a group shot from his pool. The caption? Some people are just no fun, but whatever, we still had a blast at number Karen's oasis. Marcus took a deep breath, his jaw so tight it hurt. This wasn't over. She thought she could keep pushing him, keep disrespecting him, keep treating him like he didn't belong. But she had just made a mistake. Because now Marcus wasn't just angry. He was done. And he had a plan. Marcus sat on his patio that evening, staring at the water in his pool. The moonlight reflected on the surface, making it shimmer like liquid silver. It should have been peaceful, but all he could think about was Karen. She had pushed him too far. For 3 years, he'd ignored her snide comments, brushed off her entitled behavior, and tolerated her presence. But now, she had made it personal. She had disrespected his home, his hard work, and, more than anything, his patience. He wasn't the type to get loud, he wasn't the type to argue, but he was the type to solve problems. And that's exactly what he was about to do. The next morning, Marcus drove down to the local seafood market. He walked inside, nodding at the workers behind the counter. I need a bucket of live crabs, he said. The worker raised an eyebrow. Big order? You cooking for a party? Marcus smiled. Something like that. After paying, he carried the heavy bucket carefully to his car, setting it in the trunk. The crabs inside scratched at the plastic walls, claws clacking together. Perfect. By the time he got home, the sun was at its peak. It was hot, exactly the kind of weather Karen couldn't resist. Marcus knew she would be back. She always came when it was hot. So he got to work. He walked to the side of his house where the tall hedge blocked his pool from view. The moment she and her friends stepped through the gate, they wouldn't be able to see the water until they were right up to the edge. He took a deep breath, lifted the bucket, and carefully emptied it into the pool. The crabs tumbled in, their dark shells vanishing beneath the rippling surface. They weren't dangerous, just small, feisty creatures looking for something to grab onto. And when Karen and her friends jumped in, they'd find out exactly how feisty. Now, All he had to do was wait. And he didn't have to wait long. An hour later, he heard the familiar sound of the gate creaking open. Laughter. Karen's voice, light and carefree. "Told you guys he won't do anything, he's all talk." Marcus remained seated on his patio chair, hidden in the shade. He sipped his iced tea, listening. Footsteps on the pavement, the sound of fabric rustling, probably Karen taking off her cover-up. A splash. Then another. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then, a shriek. A loud, high-pitched scream that echoed through the backyard. Then another scream. And another. "What the hell is that?" Something grabbed me. Oh my God. It pinched me. The sound of splashing, frantic movement. Karen and her friends thrashing through the water. And then, "Get out! Get out!" Marcus set his tea down and walked toward the pool, keeping his face neutral. He stopped at the edge just as Karen and her friends scrambled onto the deck, dripping wet and wide-eyed with terror. Karen's face was bright red, not from the sun, but from pure humiliation. Her sunglasses were gone, her hair soaked and tangled. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" "You know what I'm talking about. There are things in your pool." Marcus glanced at the water, watching as a small crab bobbed to the surface. It waved its claw before sinking back down. He turned back to Karen. "Oh, that." He folded his arms. "Well, since you love my pool so much, I figured I'd give you a little surprise." Karen's mouth opened and closed. She looked furious, like she wanted to argue, but couldn't find the words. Her friends, however, were done. "I'm out," one of the women muttered, grabbing her towel. "Never coming back here again," the other grumbled. The man shook his head, glaring at Karen. "You said this place was yours. What the hell, Karen?" Karen turned on him. "Oh, shut up, Jason. It was just a joke." Jason scoffed and walked off. Karen turned back to Marcus, her hands clenched into fists. "You think this is funny?" she spat. Marcus tilted his head. "A little." Her face turned an even darker shade of red. "You humiliated me." Marcus sighed, stepping closer. His voice was calm, steady. "No, Karen. You humiliated yourself. You've been walking into my backyard like you own it, treating me like I don't belong here, like I should be grateful you even acknowledge me." He shook his head. "You thought I wouldn't do anything. You thought you could walk all over me forever. But guess what? You were wrong." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked around as if searching for backup, but her friends were already gone. She was alone. For the first time, she looked small. Marcus turned away, heading back to his patio chair. He picked up his iced tea, took a slow sip, and looked at her one last time. "Now, Karen, if I ever catch you in my pool again, I won't be so nice next time." She swallowed hard. Then, without another word, she grabbed her things and walked out of his yard. And for the first time in years, Marcus knew. She wouldn't be back. Karen had always walked through both the neighborhood like she owned it. She was the kind of woman who believed rules didn't apply to her, that her presence alone was some kind of gift to the people around her. But now, for the first time since she moved in, she wasn't strutting. She wasn't smirking. She wasn't tossing back her hair with that self-satisfied glint in her eye. She was silent. And that silence? It was louder than any of the insults she had thrown at Marcus over the years. Marcus didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to gloat or rub it in her face. The entire street had seen what happened. The neighborhood that once treated her with forced politeness now whispered about her behind closed doors. The humiliation she had suffered wasn't just a moment of embarrassment. It was a shift in power, and Karen knew it. For the next few days, Marcus noticed the small changes. Karen's usual routine involved loud morning runs where she made sure everyone saw her, as if she was parading through her kingdom. But now, she stayed indoors. Her car, usually parked right in front of her house, was tucked away in the garage. The friends who used to drop by regularly stopped coming. Even the neighborhood social media page, where Karen was always posting about community standards and property values, had gone quiet. And the best part? Marcus didn't have to do a thing. People had seen the truth. They had seen her arrogance, her entitlement, the way she walked all over others. Now, they saw her for who she truly was. One afternoon, while Marcus was watering his front lawn, his neighbor James walked up to the fence with a knowing grin. "Man," James said, shaking his head, "I don't know what's funnier, the way she ran out of your pool or the fact that she's gone completely silent since then." Marcus chuckled. "Guess she didn't like being on the other side of the joke." "Guess not." James leaned against the fence. "You know, you did the whole neighborhood a favor. She's been acting like she runs this place since she moved in." Marcus shrugged. "All I did was set a boundary." James smirked. "Yeah, well, you set it with a bucket of live crabs. That's legendary." Marcus shook his head, smiling, but deep down, he knew it wasn't just about the crabs. It was about respect. Karen had spent years looking down on him, treating him like he didn't belong in his own home. And now, for the first time, she was forced to acknowledge that she had gone too far. A week passed before Karen finally tried to act like everything was normal. Marcus saw her one morning, stepping onto her porch in her usual, expensive workout gear. Her back was straight, her chin high, but her confidence had cracks in it now. She pulled out her phone, scrolling for a moment before hesitating. Usually this was when she would take a selfie, some posed picture with a caption about morning motivation or boss babe energy. But today, she put the phone back in her pocket. She started jogging down the street, but she wasn't moving with her usual bounce. She wasn't waving at people like she normally did, and Marcus could tell. She felt different. People weren't looking at her the way they used to. They weren't impressed anymore. Karen had always thrived on attention, on making herself the center of every conversation. But now, the attention she was getting wasn't admiration. It was curiosity. It was amusement. It was the lingering effect of her humiliation. And Karen hated it. Later that afternoon, Marcus was in his driveway, working on his car, when he heard footsteps approaching. He glanced up. Karen. She was standing near the edge of his driveway, shifting awkwardly on her feet. She had sunglasses perched on top of her head, but for the first time ever, she wasn't wearing them to cover her eyes. She looked uncomfortable. That was new. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag and stood up. He didn't speak first. He waited. Karen cleared her throat. "Hey!" It was a simple word, but coming from her, it was shocking. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Hey!" She hesitated, glancing down the street as if making sure no one was watching. Then she exhaled sharply. "Look, about what happened." Marcus stayed silent, waiting. Karen bit her lip, her usual confidence struggling to surface. "I just wanted to say, you really didn't have to do that." Marcus tilted his head. "Didn't have to do what?" Karen huffed, crossing her arms. "The whole crab thing. You humiliated me." Marcus studied her for a moment, then said, "No, Karen. You humiliated yourself." She stiffened. "I asked you nicely to stay out of my pool. You ignored me. I warned you again. You still ignored me. You acted like my home was yours, like I didn't matter." Marcus's voice was calm, steady. "So no, Karen. I didn't humiliate you. You did that all on your own." Karen's jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. For the first time, she had no comeback, no snide remark, no passive-aggressive insult disguised as a joke. She just stood there, silent. Finally, she muttered, "I guess I deserved that." Marcus crossed his arms. "Yeah? You did?" Another pause. Then, to his utter surprise, Karen sighed. "Look, I'm not saying we have to be friends or anything, but I'll stay out of your way." Marcus nodded. "That's all I ever wanted." Karen didn't respond. She just gave a small, almost reluctant nod before turning and walking back toward her house. And for the first time, Marcus believed it. She was done. The days passed, and Karen kept her word. No more invading his backyard. No more snide remarks. No more treating him like he didn't belong. She wasn't friendly, but she was respectful. And that was enough. One morning, as Marcus stepped outside to grab his newspaper, he saw Karen at her mailbox. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, she gave a small nod. "Morning." Marcus raised an eyebrow. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. So he nodded back. "Morning." And just like that, the war was over. As Marcus sat by his pool that evening, watching the sun set over the water, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He hadn't needed to raise his voice. He hadn't needed to stoop to her level. He had simply shown her, in a way she couldn't ignore, that he wasn't someone she could walk over. Respect wasn't given. It was earned. And sometimes, the best way to handle injustice wasn't with anger, but with creativity. Karen had learned that lesson the hard way. And Marcus? Marcus had won. Not just the battle over his pool, but the battle for his peace. And that, more than anything, was worth it. A week had passed since the incident at the pool, and something strange had happened. Karen had disappeared from the neighborhood scene. No more loud laughter by the pool. No more uninvited guests. No more Instagram selfies captioned number KARENSOASIS. It was as if she had finally realized that she wasn't untouchable. Marcus hadn't seen her much except for the occasional glance from her porch when she thought he wasn't looking. She never waved, never spoke, just watched. And that was fine by him. For the first time in years, his backyard was peaceful. He could sit by his pool, listen to the soft rippling of the water, and enjoy his home without the feeling of being invaded. It felt good. One evening, as he grilled steaks on the patio, James walked over with a beer in hand. "You know," James said, leaning on the fence, "I think you broke her." Marcus smirked. She had it coming. James took a sip of his beer. "You didn't just win, you humbled her." Marcus turned the steaks over, watching the flames flicker beneath them. "She needed to learn that respect isn't given just because you think you're important. It's earned." James chuckled. "Well, lesson learned? The neighborhood owes you one." Later that night, Marcus sat by his pool, watching the reflection of the moon on the water. The cool night air wrapped around him, peaceful and still. For years, Karen had tested him, thinking he wouldn't stand up for himself. But he had shown her that dignity wasn't something to be stepped on, that people like her didn't get to walk all over people like him. He had solved the problem his way. No violence, no shouting, just a little creativity. And now? Now, Karen avoided him like the plague. The next morning, as Marcus stepped outside to grab his newspaper, he saw her again, standing by her mailbox, fidgeting with her phone. For the first time, she met his eyes. And for the first time, she actually spoke. "Morning," she muttered. Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised. It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't an insult either. It was different. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. With a small nod, he replied, "Morning." Then he walked back inside, feeling lighter than he had in years. Sometimes the best way to deal with people like Karen wasn't to argue. It wasn't to fight. It was to show them why they were wrong. And Marcus had done exactly that. His peace was restored. His home was his again. And as he looked out at his pool, shimmering in the morning sun. He smiled. Because Karen had finally learned respect isn't given, it's earned.